Welcome back to the Djellab channel, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it's nothing but football. Welcome. Hope you guys are doing very well at home. Joining me today, we've got a new face on the channel. Meron, welcome. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good.
For the lovely people at home, if they've not seen you before, what is it you do? What's your YouTube channel?
So it's a game of two halves, a lot of tactical analysis, player analysis, transfer breakdowns, talking about my club when
Newcastle
I can.
United, Newcastle United, very much
is.
In the headlines at the moment. We'll be getting into them a little bit later on. And another face who you've never seen on the channel before, have you? Or me and him on the same video. Joe Tomlinson, how are things?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Settling into what is going to be a busy season because the transfer window feels like it's still like kicking up a gear. There's a lot of transfers knocking about, so videos to be made.
Indeed. The season kicks off in crazily 2 weeks,
Yeah,
which has just come around like lightning. But just before we get into today's video, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor. And that's because William Hill's final one standing is here, and it's football's ultimate last person standing game with a share of £500,000 up for grabs. About the same as a week of Erling Haaland's wages. Now, if you've never heard of it, it's very, very simple. It's a game where each week you pick one Premier League team, and if they win, you go through to the next round. But once you pick them, you can't use them again for the rest of the season. Once they're gone, they're gone. But if that team loses or even draws, you're out. That's it. That's as easy as the game works. As long as your team wins, you're through. There's no admin, there's no charge, it's free to play. So if you trust your football knowledge, then there's £500,000 up for grabs. To enter, just hit the link down below in the description or scan the QR code on screen right now or download the William Hill app. It's as easy as that. You've got until 12:30 on Saturday, August the 16th to enter and lock your team pick in before game week 1. So if you back your gut and you're going to play it bold, or if you play it safe, whatever your strategy is, final one standing is the game to test it. Now, of course, you must be over 18 to play and be living in either Ireland or the UK only to do it. Terms and conditions do apply. There will be a link down below as well with the full terms in the description, and please gamble responsibly. But as you guys can see on today's video, by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about transfers and transfers that have already been made. We might mention a few that could possibly be happening as well. I think we'll have to add context to each club's transfer window. But we're going to be trying to decide who has won or is winning the transfer window, the summer transfer window currently.
It's never a good title, though, is it?
It's never a good title.
If you win the transfer window,
you normally finish like 16th.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to win the transfer window.
Very, very true. I remember a couple of seasons ago, actually, me and you, Joe, chatting about the fact that sometimes when we did our predictions, we looked too much into the transfers that have
Don't
come
put weight
in.
On the transfers.
Exactly, and that sometimes the teams that have maybe not done too much, but built already or still have their solid foundation there, end up doing a lot better. But without further ado, let's kick things off and talk about Manchester United.
Starting with United.
Yes, I think so, Joe.
The fans don't want to see it; they're bored of it.
And their business, because so far, I guess the two high-profile signings they've brought in currently are Brian and Mbeumo from Brentford and Matheus Cunha from Wolverhampton Wanderers. There are now rumours, obviously, as well about Benjamin Sesko,
Big Ben,
who could be on his way. Much to Meron's, I guess, sadness if the other guy does leave, who we'll get onto later. Where do we rank this window at the moment then, Joe? Obviously, as a United fan, how are you feeling about the business? Two attackers coming in. That was a major problem last season for finding goals, finding people to put it in the back of the net. Obviously, still haven't got a striker. Haven't necessarily sorted out that midfield yet. And Andre Onana is maybe going to be number one.
Sounds great so far.
Exactly. I don't know if they're going to be taking the title of winning the transfer window, but how do you feel?
I think you'd probably rate it about a 6 so far. You know, the spending has been pretty large. These players have come in for a lot of money, and Mbeumo and Cunha. Cunha obviously was the release clause and was done extremely early, and Mbeumo had that sort of protracted period of like 44 days between the first bid going in and him arriving at the club, which wasn't ideal. I think the biggest drawback so far to United's window has been the lack of sales. You know, I don't have a huge problem with the Marcus Rashford loan deal. I know a lot of people wanted a fee there, but the real issue with Marcus Rashford was those wages, wasn't it? When you look at him as a package, that sort of £15 million a year saving on wages goes a long way for Manchester United. And frankly, you know, he was so set on joining Barcelona, I think it made the market quite narrow for him. But Garnacho really, for United and for Amorim, given how that ended at the tail end of the season with the split between him and Amorim after the Europa League final, I think that has put Manchester United in a really awkward position. And this sort of building of a bomb squad of players that aren't being taken on tour, don't have a future at Manchester United, does weaken a negotiating position. You know, Chelsea had a similar sort of thing going on last summer, where it was the first really clear example I can remember of a bomb squad being built. Players like Ben Chilwell, players like Trevor Chalobah, who ended up going out for either below their market rate or on loan. And I think that's probably the situation Manchester United are in now. So definitely sales has been a big negative. But I do like Mbeumo and Cunha. I think they fit the system really well. I like the fact they're Premier League proven. The age profile seems about right, 25, 26 years old. I like the fact that they're very, very vertical players. Like they have over a long distance, have that sort of ability to carry the ball extremely well. I think a lot of Manchester United's players, you know, you think of recent signings like Anthony and Sancho, they want it in tight pockets, they want it in small spaces. They're sort of around the edge of the box is where they're going to do their best work, whereas Cunha wants to carry the ball over large distances, wants to support with intensity off and on the ball. So I think the signings have been really, really positive. Maybe overpays, but the window as a whole is drawn back because of the sales.
Okay, Meron, where do you stand at the moment with United's kind of transfer window at the moment? Yeah. 2 good players being brought in. I think that's undoubtedly the seasons they had last year were absolutely fantastic. And to be honest, Joe's right. I think age profiles are really, really good. They can still develop as well. They've still got time to learn this like system that Amorim wants to play them into. But are you maybe a bit more concerned about the midfield, about the goalkeeping situation? Where do you stand?
I think one of the big problems is what you said, which is you need more players now. I think Ruben Amorim is someone that needs someone to learn his system. And for you to be going this deep into the window, I don't think he's too happy with that in terms of he needs players to come in, learn that system, start fast, tough fixture list at the start of the season as well, which you said to me before this episode started. And I think to only have Cunha and Mbeumo at this point in the season, he probably wanted players in quicker. I do like the profiles of those players. I think you needed Premier League proven. Like you can't see them failing. It's a weird one. I say that with a lot of trepidation, you know? Yeah. You know, you never know what happens at Man United. But Mbeumo, I wanted him at Newcastle. I do think, how is he going to fit in that inside position? I think he starts off wide, likes to drift in, to start in that position and be in those tight spaces. I'm just interested to see how it works. I don't think it's going to be an automatic fit straight away, but I think he'll naturally get into it. Whereas Cunha, you can see him in that left-sided 10, drifting out wide, being in the pocket, threading those passes in behind, but also having that long-range shooting ability. I like both players, but there's just so much left to do. And it's a worry for someone like Amorim that needs to start fast.
Well, you also have to add to side, and you mentioned it, Joe, about some of the sales. If you get to a point where Garnacho still hasn't gone, where Sancho still hasn't gone, who is the... Anthony still hasn't gone. I mean, not only does that leave players in the squad who, one, aren't necessarily going to fit it, two, who are on wages that United can't really be affording not to play them. But thirdly, them going does free up space for, in an ideal world, a sale does free up space for United to bring in these other positions. And if you had to look at the number one now that United need to focus on, is it midfield for you, Joe? Or do you think striker?
In my opinion, it's midfield. Like, we can let's talk before we get onto midfield about Sesko, though, right? Because I know that's what a lot of people want to hear. Benjamin Sesko in the news this week, heavily being linked with that number 9 role. It feels like between Manchester United and Newcastle, a lot of very similar targets have been identified this summer, be it Cunha, be it Mbeumo, be it Ben Sesko. Man United have obviously been linked with him and Ollie Watkins heavily over the last 7 days. 2 players at totally different stages of their career. Ollie Watkins, an extremely proven asset who scored double figures every single league season going back to 2015 when he was at Exeter City. Somebody who, you know, has real functionality to his game, able to drop deep and also press through the channels. So I think he would have been perfect for this Manchester United system. But at £65 million at 30 years old, Man United have to reassess, I think. You know, Ineos in particular aren't looking to sign that type of player anymore, really, in an ideal world. Whereas Ben Sesko, who would maybe cost a little bit more, is a lot more raw. You know, this is a player who scored 27 league goals over the last 2 seasons. It's not a player who is a guarantee by any metric. He's missed some huge chances. But he does have that huge scale upside, doesn't he? If it works, it's a big if it works, there is potential superstar ability there. So I'm not overly surprised they've ended up going for Sesko. It feels more Ineos. I think Watkins feels more Ed Woodward, if you know what I mean. But I do think it's a lot of money to spend on a player. Let's say it ends up being 80 million euros when there is a gaping hole in midfield. I think there is a gaping problem in that Manchester United midfield.
To partner with Bruno.
To partner with Bruno.
Okay.
To partner with Bruno
or
to partner with Kobbie Mainoo. I think there is a huge lack of athleticism in Manchester United's midfield. A player that can cover wide spaces doesn't exist in the side right now. I think Ugarte is fine in tight areas, and when United are set potentially in low blocks against better teams, Ugarte works quite well because he can shuttle across, and he's very, very good at getting like a last-ditch toe to the ball, isn't he? But when United want to play higher and a player has to sit a little bit deeper and cover when a wing-back's pushed right up the pitch, I don't think United have that athleticism. Casemiro certainly doesn't. It's not really Bruno's game. Kobbie Mainoo is not a player that's going to want to play in wide expanses. So I think United need an athletic number 6 come number 8. Like, it just doesn't exist in the squad. And I think it's a gaping hole for me. We've seen Ruben Amorim speak multiple times about the lack of speed in Manchester United's midfield. You look at United's midfield, they're very slow. Very slow to a man.
So you would you'd rather have another season with Rasmus Højlund up top, or Xerxes? I guess there's even an argument maybe you could fit Cunha into that striker role. Bruno on the left, maybe.
I don't know. United need both.
Than a midfielder.
United need both. They need a striker and they need another midfielder. I think the issue is spending 80 million on a striker really limits your budget for midfielders. If that was a cheaper option in that forward area, then you could ask those questions. And what that means for the future of Rasmus Højlund, I think, is a legitimate question, right? If an 80 million euro 22-year-old arrives at the club, when you yourself are an 80 million euro 22-year-old, does that mean Rasmus Højlund gets sold? And if so, who are his suitors? I saw Borussia Dortmund being linked with
there were those links
Leipzig
to Inter Milan
themselves.
as well for a while back.
You can see him reviving his career somewhere else as well. It feels like there's a Man United curse going on.
Of course, yeah. So, I mean, maybe Newcastle would be interesting.
Who knows?
Well, that would be interesting. From a Man United point of view, we'll move maybe on. We can talk about Sesko as well for Newcastle later. But from a Man United point of view, Meron, if it was between Ollie Watkins and Sesko, you mentioning about the other two signings in Cunha and Mbeumo being great for the fact that they are Premier League proven. I mean, Ollie Watkins does have that tick to his name. Yeah. Who would you be personally preferring out the two? I feel like neither are necessarily a bad. Either. It's not a bad thing, is it? But
they both have their upsides, and I think I think you've got to take into account the situation that Man United are in. I think they need to start well. They need someone that knows the Premier League, and I think Watkins brings that. He is on the wrong side of the age sort of barrier in terms of pushing 30, but I think Sesko is that risk, that one that you see Man United take so risky. Often.
Do you think it's less of a risk though with Mbeumo and Cunha already signed? Because you've got two guaranteed Premier League proven forwards in alongside him.
It's about the balance of how they play with each other as well. I think Watkins loves to run in behind, loves those channel runs. He can open up space for Mbeumo to make those runs centrally, Cunha to drift inside and link play with both of them. I'm still also struggling to see, that centre midfield position, like you said, is probably the most important position, especially if you're playing Bruno Fernandes centre midfield. Yeah. Because you're saying Cunha's playing left-sided, Mbeumo's playing right-sided and as a striker. That means Bruno has to play in centre midfield.
I think
and he doesn't have the legs.
Yeah.
And you need those legs. And so that centre midfield position for me is top priority. And if you have to, whoever's cheaper at striker position might be what you go for rather than the profile. Because I think they both could work in the system.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. We've not spoken about the Andre Onana situation, have we? And we saw reports this morning of United again being linked with Gianluigi Donnarumma, being linked with other players that are cheaper, like Lamens, Royal Antwerp. They've tried to get a loan bid in for Emi Martinez, and I think the fact they've had a loan bid rejected for Emi Martinez kind of speaks volumes about the thought process there in goal. That if a goalkeeper of quality does become available, United might well end up trying to move on him.
I think it's fair enough as well. I mean, the Andre Onana conundrum over the last couple of years has had very high waves and very low waves. I mean, there has been games he's been very, very good. I think you can say at the start of last season, for the first a month and a half, he was very good. Like he can, and he has shown in his career. There is a Champions League finalist goalkeeper within him. I think he struggles with the pressure of Manchester United. I think he struggles with the way that United are at the moment under Amorim. His strengths of maybe being a ball-playing goalkeeper aren't necessarily used as much. That was the whole reason, I think, when people were speaking about Andre Onana, it was about bringing in one of the world's best with the ball at his feet. And at United, that's never been the option. He makes a lot of very simple mistakes from a shot-stopping aspect. And look, if United were to go and get Donnarumma in, I think everybody say...
But why would Donnarumma want to join United?
And that's surely what
wages,
saying.
isn't it? It's wages.
Yeah.
That would be one of the biggest reasons for
United
Donnarumma,
can't afford to pay big wages. You know, even the players that have arrived at the club, there's all these sort of reports of Burma earning 250, 300. I don't think that that's necessarily the case.
Yeah. Unless you sell players or loan players out like Garnacho.
Sancho especially got to go. You know, £300,000 a week off the books. That's an awful lot of money. So I personally don't see a world in which a goalkeeper arrives unless United can find a buyer for Onana. And does that buyer exist in the market? I would be really surprised.
And not for the fee that you guys paid as well. Like you're making a huge loss on him too. Really,
a lot of
if anyone was very true.
That's the main problem.
Very, very true. But look, if any of those signings come in, if you get another midfielder, if you do manage to find an Ollie Watkins or Benjamin Sesko in there, that United squad next season isn't looking as bad as it once was. With Ahmad as well, that right wing back. Yeah, exactly. One game a week.
There's a lot of players in the squad for one game a week. You even think in the attacking midfield area with the likes of, we're not even speaking about players like Mason Mount in there. Ahmad, who could potentially float in as a number 10, although he's been playing right wing back in pre-season. I think one game a week, there is some positive signs there for Ruben Amorim.
No, for sure. Okay, then, let's move on to who could potentially be our winners of the transfer window so far anyway. Arsenal Football Club, been very, very busy in the market. Obviously, bringing in the striker. They finally brought one in Victor Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. Martin Zubimendi come in from Real Sociedad. Noni Madueke's come in from Chelsea. All of those fees looking above £50 million. That's not the only ones, of course, as well. Christian Norgard to come into central midfield. Christian Mosquera from Valencia at the back. And Kepa Arrizabalaga in goalkeeper for the bench. And there's a world where they may not be finished.
Definitely not finished.
Obviously, we've spoken a lot on this channel about that left wing position being quite vital, being a position that we feel is still needed. But in terms of the stuff and the transfer they've done so far, Meron, it's really good. Yeah. It's really, really good. People can have debates whether they think maybe instead of Gyökeres, especially with the Alexander Isak situation now, they could have put their money elsewhere. But looking into all the problems Arsenal had and were being raised after the season, they have identified it and they've brought in good quality players, haven't they?
Yeah, but I think this whole window rests on Gyökeres. I think the chase for a striker for this long, to get someone like Gyökeres in, that's been linked to so many clubs, he needs to work. He either needs to get the goals that they need, or he needs to bring out the best in the players around him so that they get the goals and assists they need. Zubimendi, top quality player, replacing that number 6 position. Norgard's an interesting one because he just adds depth.
Great depth.
He's a Premier League proven player. The age, he's not going to be too phased by what's going on. Mosquera, that centre-back depth. They had players that can play in centre-back, like the Ben Whites, Calafiori, but they don't quite fit, like the natural fit.
Yeah, it's like Kivior was one, I guess.
Kivior's won that, but he performed well towards the end of last season. But I think they needed that physicality, that replacement for Saliba.
And he's young as well, got plenty of time. Sell on value if it ever comes to that.
But I think what they've concentrated on is filling out the squad. The one signing that you have to question is Madueke. And I think even the fact that you said they're still looking for a left winger baffles me why they went for Madueke. Because you would rather a left winger that's natural there that can cover right wing rather than a right winger that can cover left wing, especially with Saka getting the game time that he will do.
I think currently with the window and with there still being rumours about a left winger shows that at least Arsenal are still targeting that position. And I think one of the biggest issues we saw last year with Arsenal was once Saka is injured, it's not pretty. No. It's not pretty at times for creatively in the Arsenal side, for even goal scoring wise. Saka is one of the best right wingers in the world. And so losing him and having to at times shift to Martinelli out there, he did a bit of a job. Obviously we saw Trossard kind of gone to left whenever needed to put Martinelli out there. bringing in someone of Noni Madueke's level to be that cover when needed, to then also fight on the left side as well, I think is pretty good. I do agree that if they go to the end of the window and they haven't brought in that lights out left winger, which can contribute a lot more than, say, what Martinelli did last season. Look, if Martinelli ever found his form that he did a couple of years ago, they're laughing. They've got the perfect scenario. But that hasn't been found in a little while now. And he's also picked up injuries since then too. Noni Madueke was tried a few times at the end of the season on the left wing.
Yeah.
Looked okay at times. But where we've always, or at least I've always felt, you could see Noni Madueke thrive is on that right wing. And we're just not necessarily going to see that. So I do understand your
and for the fee they paid for
questions. Him. Yeah, 50 plus for
is the fee that they paid for him that crazy?
For a backup right
I feel
winger.
like that's the going rate for a good quality winger nowadays.
But for a good quality winger that's normally starting for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that price is fair, but I think for a person that you can see as your backup, I think when they have such other areas in the squad where they need to improve, like the left wing position, could they have withheld that money, kept the money for Gyökeres and gone for Isak, and really strengthened that striker position? Because it feels like they've fleshed out the squad when they could have taken a couple of chances in centre midfield and gone heavy on the striker. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's where the strategy might come into question if he doesn't start well or injury starts to come in.
If Priya Newcastle had bought Noni Madueke for the same fee, I would have said great signing.
Yeah.
The issue for me more so is just the fact that you spent a lot of money on someone who might not play.
I think Madueke will play. Madueke will
Whatever
get plenty of minutes. There's going to be 65 games this season, multiple competitions. I think you're seeing a situation now in Premier League football and European football where the idea of Pep Guardiola wanting this tiny little 16-man squad is out of the window now.
You're not wrong.
They want bigger squads. They know that they've got to have a game every 3 days, and players like Madueke will get his minutes this season. I actually think, as we sit here today, right now, Arsenal have had the best transfer window of any club in the Premier League.
They're cool.
I think the reason I'm going to say that is because a little bit like we said at the start, in terms of having the most settled unit, I think what Arsenal have done is with that settled unit, they've just added little pieces of improvement in certain areas to take themselves either to the next level or to raise the floor of the side. I think Zubamendi immediately raises the ceiling of the defensive midfield position. I think he is an upgrade on Thomas Partey. I think he adds a totally different style of game as well. His long-range passing ability adds sort of another string to Arsenal's bow. I think Gyökeres is an immediate upgrade in the number 9 area. And yes, we can talk about whether or not his game style translates perfectly from that sort of transitional style at Sporting to Arsenal. But the amount of chances they create, I'm convinced he's going to score goals this season. I also think that the backups they've signed have really raised the floor. Like Christian Mosquera, we're talking about one of the most highly coveted young centre-backs in Europe for £15 million in a position where, they really did need a backup to a William Saliba. Same with Christian Norgard, who was kind of getting bemoaned about online, wasn't it? But as a Jorginho replacement, I think that is, a player who can fit in quite comfortably to pretty much every game scenario Arsenal were looking for in the defensive midfield position as a B option. He's not going to be a starter. He's not going to be a first name on the team sheet, but as a cut option, fantastic. I think Madueke, again, raises the floor. So every player they've signed has either been a floor raiser or a ceiling raiser. And that combined with the fact that their squad was so settled in the first place, I think is a real positive for Arteta. So if they can get, and I'm not necessarily sure they need an out-and-out left winger, if they can get a player who can operate in an area that covers Martin Ødegaard and the left wing, like an Eberechi Eze, I think that we are talking about an absolutely astonishing window so far for Arteta, full of high-quality players, high-potential players, or huge characters in the dressing room like Christian Norgard. Overall, I love the Arsenal window.
I agree. To be honest, I don't know if there are too many other clubs who would be able to put their hands on the title of the best window. We mentioned it, I can't remember if we said it before or during recording, but sometimes it's not actually quite good to get the title of winning the transfer window. It never quite works out for that club. I would say, though, that Gyökeres is a big change.
But is it? Again, I think the fee for Gyökeres, £55 million up front.
No, fee I've got no issue with.
It's great.
But you mentioned about how obviously Arsenal aren't changing too much. They've got a bit different players there. Like if they ended up having a front line of Noni Madueke and Gyökeres, that is quite a different attack set up to what they've had last year. That is a lot different to having a Havertz and a Martinelli as well.
But they've also still got Havertz
They
there.
do,
I don't
they
think
do, yeah.
like this idea that Gyökeres has got to come in, he's got to bang 25 goals. I don't know how much truth there is in that. I think, honestly, if Kai Havertz had started consistently without that injury across the full course of last season, he might have got close to that 15, 16 goal mark.
Yeah, I would have
And
been out.
if that's the case, does Gyökeres need to bang 25 goals? Or does he just offset those goals that Havertz has? Havertz chips in with 10, Gyökeres chips in with 16, 17. I think that offsets itself enough. I don't think there is such a need at Arsenal as people are making out for this number 9 to come in and bang 30 goals in. He must score goals.
I think if they want to win the Premier League, they do.
It
That's the
depends.
difference. Erling Haaland's doing it at Man City.
I think it depends. I think
Yeah,
one of the things that this
Salah's
transfer
doing it at
window
Liverpool.
opens up is options.
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
from
very
a,
true.
Totally,
Very,
especially
very
from
true.
a tactical
Yeah.
perspective. If you think he could probably play Havertz and Gyökeres together in that dropping in deep, the way Havertz likes to drop in deep, the way Gyökeres likes to stretch the back line, I think he offers different tactical options.
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest on that right wing, also on that left wing, be able to get to the byline and put left wing crosses in. You know, there's different options now that he's got in this team. Will Arteta change the tactics that
It's
work
another
so
question.
well? Is another
Yeah.
question. And he's one that's even shown that he's not, he doesn't like rotating too much. The amount of minutes Saka played over last season where you could have dropped him here and there or taken him off early. Now you got Madueke. Will he do it now? And I think the transfer window as it is at the moment shows that maybe a slight change in how Arteta is going to approach this season from a tactical perspective, squad rotation perspective. And I think it could work. I don't think Gyökeres has to get the 30, 40 goals.
Yeah.
If he can bring out the best in the rest of them
agree.
around him. They also struggle against low blocks. Someone like Eze coming in. Someone that can give a rest to Odegaard.
If they
You
get
know,
Eze, Jesus
I think
Christ.
They just built out the
Madueke as
squad in a
well.
good way.
Madueke against low blocks.
No, he's one of the best.
Yeah,
He's
1v1.
genuinely one of the
So
best at
dangerous.
it. Like, I would not be shocked if he is given enough minutes that we could sit here next season and think, wow, like they've got such a player in their hands.
Yeah.
There is also a thing in football as well about like the in thing at the moment is having wingers who are, say, the opposite foot to the wing that they're on, so they can cut in. However, there's nothing to suggest that Noni Madueke could play on that left wing and just be used, as you said, to be this guy to put in crosses. Yeah, it does feel like with obviously Arsenal having their striker in now as well, they might be an option for the final one standing. They play Man United on the first day too, so not a bad option if I do say so myself. Okay, on to our next team that we're going to talk about. It is, of course, the mighty Blues of West London, Chelsea Football Club, because, of course, it's a transfer window. And Chelsea have been busy. The sky is blue. Already having joined the club, Esteval has come in. We saw him signed, 2 summers ago? Now we saw Kendry Pires come in. He's going on loan, I think, is to Strasbourg. We've seen them sell João Felix to Saudi Arabia. We've seen them sell Jordi Petrovic. We've seen them sell Noni Madueke. A couple of other players have also gone as well. But the big ones. Jamie Bino Gittins coming from Borussia Dortmund for a big fee. João Pedro coming from Brighton, big fee. Liam Djellab coming from Ipswich, decent fee. £30 million. Esteval, as I mentioned. Asugo coming in as well, a kind of midfielder from Sporting, depth. Mamadou Sarr gone back on loan to Strasbourg. And they are the ones at the moment. It seems like it was confirmed yesterday that Jorrel Hato is done as well. That could be confirmed by the time this video goes out. And there are very, very, very strong links, and again, could have happened by the time this video goes out, that Xavi Simons would also be in the Chelsea blue as well next season. Let's not get it from the biased fan over here. Joe, Chelsea's business, what are you making of it?
I think it's really good. Yeah, I think it's really good. I think Chelsea have had a very good summer, particularly in the sales department. You know, the fee they've got for João Felix is quite mind-blowing, isn't it? I think they've added options in that number 9 role that are really, really exciting. You know, particularly João Pedro, I think, has huge upside to his game. I really do. I think his ability to be versatile, to play in between the lines, but also, as we saw at the Club World Cup, to stretch teams and finish from surprising areas, I think is a real string to Maresca's bow. I don't think they're quite as settled as Arsenal as a unit. Like, I think they have the ability to have a huge swing of upside, like of just suddenly a couple of things click and you're like, oh my God, Chelsea are unbelievable. I think they've got some of the best players in the league in certain roles, like Cucurella, like Moises Caicedo.
Palmer.
But I do think they've still got the ability to swing a little bit the other way, where it's a
Young
very
team.
young team.
Yeah.
You know, there is still a lot of change in that side, isn't there? I still think they need a central defender to come in and partner Levi Colwill, who is improving yet again. But overall, I think the business has been really positive, and I certainly think that they have sort of locked themselves in for a top 4 spot as we sit here today. Do I think they are going to push Arsenal and Liverpool, maybe City, for the title extremely closely? Maybe not quite there.
What do they need
but
to do to do that then?
I just think they need to gel together a little bit longer. I think that the squad elements are all pretty much there. There's
And
some
the youthful
amazing
element
players.
as well. Yeah.
But like they're just maybe 18 months sooner in their project than Arsenal were. You know, Arsenal have been playing together for a long time now. So it was like a lot of that Liverpool unit. But I think they are going to be an incredibly dangerous team this year, Chelsea. And I think the signing of Xavi Simons is flying under the radar here big time. I can't believe that Arsenal weren't interested in Xavi Simons.
I think they were linked some rumours that they had a look.
I know,
supposedly.
but you know, we're talking about Eberechi Eze as this sort of wing fielder who can come out and play outside, play in between the lines in those sort of pockets, score goals from range. I think Xavi Simons offers very, very similar sort of options, and how we saw Maresca lining up in that Club World Cup with that sort of box-style midfield with the 2 10s floating in there suits Xavi Simons down to the ground. And the good thing is, I just don't think these players have to play every week. You know, the squad is so deep. There's so many different options
Champions
that
League
they
next
can
season.
rotate in and out. I just would still like to see an experienced centre-back signed. And I know that's not the Blueco way. They don't sign these sort of 26, 27-year-olds. But just a bit of stability at the heart of the defence alongside Colwill will go a long way, I think.
I completely agree. It's basically my exact thoughts of Chelsea. I think there is still, I guess, maybe questions about Rob Sanchez. Like, if it's the Rob Sanchez from the Club World Cup.
Externally,
Chelsea,
yeah, but internally, no, right? Internally, I don't see any world
is that
in
true,
which
though?
that's-
Because if they were so close to signing Mike Maignan, that would suggest internally that they do think there is a
But do you think that was not
position of need.
a market opportunity for them? Like,
Possibly.
15
Possibly.
million pound bids suggest to me that it is. Like, if they were
Possibly.
serious about that.
Possibly.
then
And you
we
can't
would
rule
see
it out.
them.
You know,
can't rule it
Chelsea,
out.
to the end of the window, you can't rule them out with any
Exactly.
player. And I think one
Exactly.
thing that goes under the radar is if you remember the noise around Chelsea last season, it was a bit of a laughing stock.
Yeah.
You know, you see the Carragher comments about why would anyone want to go to Chelsea. You don't hear that this summer.
No,
Everyone
very true.
kind of spots that they've kind of cracked this PSR model. You buy lots of players and you sell them at the same price or more. You know, you see Vega going out, hasn't played any minutes. Then you get the feedback for him, and then you invest that fee on more players. And they've got this sort of system where they're not doing it the traditional way. They're just getting players in. They don't care if they stay for long, and then they sell them at a good price. And then the money you get in, you get better players. Yeah. And I think there's just that noise around Chelsea now that's just gone.
Well, it also feels as well like this summer they've signed a few players who, whilst they're still young, they are senior. Like, they have had experience at the top level. Xavi Simons is one of them. Jorrel Hato is someone that's been again, this is if they come in at the time of recording, but wanted by so many clubs, almost looked at as like the guy in his position who's young that is going to succeed there for the years to come. I think one of the other things that Chelsea have going for them this year with such a deep squad last year, when they made all these signings like João Felix and whatnot, the minutes that they were getting were Conference League minutes. Yeah. And for a player of himself and what level they hold themselves to, and Renato Vega, as he mentioned, they want to be playing more than that. They want to be playing more quality minutes as well. And you saw when it got to the January window, suddenly that squad was quite bare because half of them had left or gone on loan because they wanted to go and play more football elsewhere. At least now, all the minutes that Chelsea will be offering to a lot of these guys are very high quality, playing in the Champions League week in, week out, playing in the Premier League week in, week out. So I think that's a really big sign. I think the other thing that I like about what our signings have done this year is, you mentioned different ways of playing for Arsenal. I think that is there for Maresca as well. One of the biggest criticisms for Maresca last season was that he was so stuck in his ways and wanted to play one system. And then he got to the Club World Cup and actually showed, I am more than willing to try different things and different styles. I think he said in an interview that during the season, they were playing so many games all the time. There was no time to try and learn new things. And he actually wanted to use the Club World Cup to trial different things and to trial different ways of playing. The game that Chelsea actually lost against Flamengo was him trying it first, these two boxes and positions, box 10s. And they lost. It didn't go so well. But it showed that he stuck by it, and it obviously ended up working quite well for Chelsea. If Xavi Simons joins, he's somebody who could be playing on that left wing with Jamie Banner-Gittens. Two completely different kind of left wingers, but does give options for Maresca to play different ways next season. Someone who, again, I'm super, super excited about. Esteval. Like, he's 18 years old, come from Brazil. Like, it's going to take a bit of time, but there is such a talent in there. And the way João Pedro and Djellab will kind of dovetail each other is going to be super, super exciting.
I like the skill set. That's the thing of Pedro and Djellab as strikers. I think
And
what happens.
Jackson.
Well, that's if he stays as well. You know, he's been touted around to different clubs. You know, even to Manchester United a little bit as well. So it depends what you guys do with him. But Pedro is someone I'm just so gutted we missed out on. You know, we're sort of touted as the club that pushes the price up and then goes somewhere else. But Pedro is one where he's Premier League proven. His technical ability to drop and link play is so different from Djellab, who likes to stretch play. Yeah. And I think, like you said, you've just got those different options now with how you play tactically. And I think Maresca just used that first season to bed a foundation in terms of tactics. And now he's able to experiment a bit more, like you said, in the Club World Cup. Use it as a pre-season, put all these players in and just test them out and see what they do, what they can offer. And then you see what João Pedro does at the Club World Cup. You know, it's just insane what they're doing. And I think it's going a bit under the radar how good this transfer window is for Chelsea.
Well, only time will tell next season. Let's jump over to Liverpool then, because they've done some really good business, I think. They're another one, personally, who could take the title of winning the transfer window. They lost a couple of players, obviously, in Trent Alexander-Arnold going to Real Madrid for free. They've just sold Luis Diaz to Bayern Munich as well. Maybe we'll see them replaced him with a certain Swedish player. João Quansah obviously sold. Kelly sold. But the signings are just outrageous. Florian Wirtz coming in for over £100 million. Hugo Ekitike coming in for close to £100 million, just slightly less. Milos Kerkez coming from Bournemouth. Jeremy Frimpong coming from Leverkusen. Those are the big ones as of right now. Pre-Alexander Isak talk, that is still a fantastic window, isn't it? An absolutely outrageous window. Liverpool, I think, identified last season did so well as what we mentioned about having a squad with such a core already built there. And this year it feels like they've just added some incredible talent to that core. They've had to replace the Trent Alexander-Arnold position. It's going to be really interesting to see how that works for them next season. But how do we feel then, Joe, about Liverpool pre-Isak talk?
It's an amazing window. It is an astonishing window, and we can't ignore Isak. Like, that has to be playing into this equation, doesn't it? I mean, the thought of him in a Liverpool shirt is incredibly scary. But it almost means you forget about, Florian Wirtz arriving at the club. Maybe the most exciting talent in Europe that was available this summer. I just can't get over how good that bit of business is. It adds depth to the Dominic Szoboszlai role. Just astonishing. I think Hugo Ekitike signing as well is brilliant, and he is just pure class all over the pitch. The underlying numbers Hugo Ekitike was putting up at Frankfurt last season were seriously frightening stuff. But I do still think there are a couple of areas to this side that I'm a little bit surprised Liverpool maybe haven't addressed to this point. And obviously the focus is Alexander Isak. You can understand why. He's the most well-rounded striker in the Premier League. He provides nearly 30 goal involvements to a side that are already packed out with goal involvements. But I look at the centre-backs and I think Konate has had injury problems throughout his career, is into the final year of his contract.
Might be leaving,
Virgil van Dijk is the best centre-back in the Premier League, but is now 33, 34 years old. He's going to have serious work to do because there's no centre-backs behind them. Jorrel Quansah has left the club. Where is the support at? They wanted Dean Howson at the start of the summer. That didn't happen. So I still think they need a centre-back.
Well, yeah, he's being linked still. But
He's been linked, but it feels like it's gone a bit quiet.
Yeah, very true.
And I'm really surprised we haven't seen more links to a defensive midfielder. Ryan Gravenberch last season, I think maybe behind 2 or 3 players put up the most minutes of any defensive midfielder in the Premier League. And we're talking those players being like Moises Caicedo. So it's a player who played all the time. And behind him, you had Wataru Endo, who clearly Arne Slot likes as a sort of player to come on and is a really big dressing room presence, but isn't necessarily going to be a player that's progressive enough to start every game for Liverpool. You've also got McAllister, who can kind of play and do a job in there, but isn't a natural deep-lying midfielder. And given Gravenberch's injury record, which Bayern was sketchy to say the least, Ajax was not particularly amazing, I think I would also, if I was a Liverpool fan, want a 6 and a centre-back, which is crazy to say because their spending is approaching, £300 million if they manage to get their targets in. I just think a centre-back, as we look at this squad setup, it is really, really needed.
Well, they
now.
lost Quanta, haven't they, as well? So like they do
exactly.
need depth, and again, there is still a little bit left in the transfer window.
It has been.
Is there a slight worry, Meron, that they have added quite a lot of players here who might go into the first team, which could change a lot of the setup, could change a lot of the kind of structure that we've been so praising of Liverpool, and that, to a degree, kind of really helped them win the league last year?
Yeah.
Is there a worry that with so many added people, and again, only more might be added, right here we've got 1, 2, 3, possibly we've got 4 starting players that could have an effect on Liverpool next season?
I think looking at the players they brought in, the tactics will tweak. It has to. I think if you bring on Frimpong and Kirkes, both like to bomb forward, you've got 2 centre-backs left a bit spare at the back. Then you've got the likes of Ekatike, Wirtz being brought in up front. You've got Salah there. How do they fit all these players in? There has to be some sort of tweak. I think last season they also covered for Salah a little bit defensively in terms of the structure of the team. But Ekatike coming in, if you bring in Isak as well, where do all these players play? How do you get the balance in the team? Gravenberch is probably the only one that's more defensively minded in that centre midfield spot. McAllister can put in the work both ways, which I like. Szoboszlai can put in the work both ways. But if you want to get the best out of someone like Frimpong, he's not a right back.
Bombing forward, isn't he?
And where does Salah go then?
Yeah.
He probably has to move inside a little bit. So I think there's tactical work going on in pre-season to get the best out of all these players. Wirtz, you see the little clips of him in pre-season. He's sort of got this free role in that central area, in that number 10 position, being able to drift left and right. And I think he'll just be a star next season. He's one of those ones where you think it's just guaranteed. It's just about how they can get the best out of him rather than... And it doesn't even have to happen next season.
He's so
young. You can just let him develop. And I think that's what they're good at Liverpool. You don't have to start strong straight away. But the tactics have to tweak, definitely next season.
Let's mention him then. Alexander Isak.
Do we have to?
Meron, as the Newcastle fan here, and we maybe touch upon Newcastle afterwards, the idea of him joining Liverpool is freakish for any other fan in the world. I'm sure it's also very sad for yourself. But it is one of those guys where if he is available, which he's kind of made himself available, forced himself to be available, you get done. And that seems like what Liverpool are going to be doing.
Yeah.
I think they'll figure it out how to fit all these players in there. Maybe obviously Liverpool do like to play with their wingers kind of being almost inside and getting a lot involved in the goals. So maybe Hugo Ekatike is the middle, Isak onto the left. How frightening is it if he joins Liverpool?
Isak's not playing on the left. If he joins for 140 million, he's not.
But the wingers are basically the strikers anyway. That's my point. Is that Hugo Ekatike is dropping in. Those two, him and Salah, almost are coming inside all the time anyway.
Yeah, maybe Ekatike drops and plays this sort of second striker role, but there's no way Alexander Isak is not playing number 9.
But I think they have the ability, like what Arsenal are doing, like what Chelsea are doing, to rotate. So Ekatike, Isak can play in that central striker role. Ekatike probably likes to drift to the left more than Isak. I think Isak's had more of the central role this season.
Yeah, for the last couple of years.
Yeah, but he's also, if you remember the assist against Everton, pulling out to that left wing, taking on about 5-6 players and dinking it into the box. He's got insane technical ability to play on the left, the centre, and drop into that little number 10 position and link play. It's just scary, isn't it? If you're, as a Newcastle fan, we're just going for the top 4 again next season, so it's not as scary for us. But if you're the likes of Man United, not Man United, Chelsea, if you're like Man City, Arsenal, you're probably thinking, what do we do if he joins? That's the Haaland equivalent of what Man City did. And it's just a bit scary if you're going for the title again. What Liverpool are doing with the squad they're building. And Isak is just... I love him, but he's just insane.
Terrifying, man. That is terrifying. The prospect of Isak and Salah and Wirtz in the same lineup is absolutely terrifying the Premier League.
I don't. It kind of almost feels like give them the title at the start of the season and just and get on with it. I mean, it definitely would get them into winning the transfer window, in my opinion. Let's touch upon Newcastle then. We're talking about guys who could win the transfer window. It feels like Newcastle might have lost it.
Yeah. So far.
João Pedro you linked to, gone. I mean, you were linked to Noni Madueke, though it didn't feel like in the end you went to him, but sure. Hoyson, gone.
Djellab.
Gone.
Trafford,
gone. Ekatike, gone.
Burmo,
gone. And then the main man, the guy that kind of feels like for the last few years has just been incredible all the time, is forcing a move. Like, how does it feel as a Newcastle fan to be in the position that you are?
It's a big blow. I think in this PSR world, even with what's going on with the revenue and the wages, we thought a trophy, Champions League, how well we finished the end of the season, the squad we've got, Bruno, Tonali, Botman, Gordon on the left. You think to yourself, oh yeah, people want to join us. But I think we've just been shopping in the wrong market for this PSR world. If you go for the likes of Djellab, and Burmo, all these players, they're linked to big six clubs. Yeah. They can offer the wages that we can't offer. And I think when you have a summer where you had no sporting director, CEO's on his way out and you haven't replaced him, it just feels a bit amateurish, which for PIF doesn't look great. Yeah. I think the chairman visited the club this week, probably trying to iron things out. And then we've got Ramsdale potentially coming over the line. But it's just a window where we've had to reset expectations. You have to change the time frame of what we want to get. I think this squad, for me personally, is the one that gets us to a certain point, and then you have to sell. Yeah. And then you rebuild after. The problem with that is, would Eddie Howe stay for that? Would Bruno stay for that? Would Gordon stay for that? And then you get the likes of a fire sale happening next season. This is a big transfer window. It's not going well, but it could have an impact going forward in the next few transfer windows as well.
And I think from outsiders' perspective, it's like we talk about yes, you might have to sell. I think it's the players that you don't want to sell that might end up being sold. Like Isak is the player you don't want to sell. There are other options in the squad you'd think, I would rather lose him ahead of Alexander Isak. My biggest problem with Newcastle is, they have missed out on these stars, but they've also not recruited floor raisers so far this summer. I spoke about it earlier with Arsenal. The midfield stacked. Looks amazing on paper, doesn't it? Tonali, Bruno, Joe Linton, fabulous. But the floor behind it has actually fallen away. Longstaff, people will joke about him at home. Absolutely fine squad player. Somebody that could come in and chip in with 10 appearances a season. Mm-hmm. He's left. He's gone to Leeds. Joe Willock, yesterday we saw in the pre-season game over in Asia. I don't know whether he broke his ankle or some serious ankle problem.
Is the kid still there?
Miley.
Yeah, so Lewis Miley. So you're looking at now, 4 senior central midfielders for 3 roles. I think that's a huge issue. So we can talk about they've missed out on Pedro and Burmo, these ceiling raisers in forward positions. But where have the floor raisers been this summer that can come in and be support acts to midfielders? Where have the floor raisers been for defensive roles as well? Even the goalkeeping position, there's only finally got a floor raiser over the line now. They wanted a ceiling raiser in James Trafford, and it didn't come through. I actually think the Ramsdale deal is fine and has been way overhated
I don't get it
online. He's a loan option that was an excellent transition goalkeeper for Arsenal between a sort of 8th place spot and a title challenge. He did the job perfectly well there. So I think he's fine for Newcastle. But I think there's a lot made of sort of the stars they've missed out on. But I'm just really surprised as a club they haven't brought in players that can really, offer impact in multiple roles, in multiple sort of competitions that are just slightly below the level as well to give yourself some depth.
I think Eddie Howe, I think the control has been given this summer. By the way, I'm an Eddie Howe fan. Let's just say this. I know there's a lot of things that go on throughout the season, but I think he's been given so much control, and I think he knows how important the money is at Newcastle. Yeah. We can't buy the floor raisers before we buy the quality. Yeah. Because our first 11 still needs a right winger. For example, when we've got Elanga. It still needs a goalkeeper to push Nick Pope. It still needs, a striker if we replace Isak, or a backup striker. Before we can get the floor raisers and spend lots of money on those, that leaves us with not enough money to get the quality that we need to improve the first 11. Yeah. I think they're going in a sort of stages of development. Yeah. But the problem is they're spending so long trying to get these players that are just not working that we're going to be scrambling at the end of the window.
Look at Johan Vissa. Like that feels like that deal has dragged on. Obviously, Brentford are kicking their heels in because they've lost everybody.
Right, exactly.
But if you're Newcastle now, just get it done. Either get it done or move on. Make a decision.
Well, now we're linked with Rodrigo Muniz at Fulham, and it's like good backup striker, could work, but
is he your starting striker in the Champions League?
If Isak goes, it's all about perception as well. If you're a Newcastle squad member and you're seeing Isak go and you're bringing in Muniz, Vissa, you need a Sesko type.
What does Bruno think next season?
What does Bruno think next season? You need a Sesko type player. For me, there's no chance. I think when we went for Gay last season, Crystal Palace said, this is the price. Yeah. You pay the price, you get him. And I think with Liverpool, you say, this is the price. And I think you also add a time frame with how deep we're going into the window. Yeah. By next week, if you do not offer this price, you do not get him. And Isak, you stay. You got Champions League. We'll reintegrate you back into the squad, and we go for another striker to help. In case he leaves next season, probably will. That's what we do. But it just seems a bit amateurish. Like, will he go? Will he won't go? Who's making a decision? Eddie Howe said the board are going to make the decision. I know what I want. It's just a lot of mixed messaging going along, and I don't think we've got the structure in place to have the window that we needed this summer.
Wow. Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about Newcastle, that's for sure. Definitely, when it comes to the final one standing, I'm going to be staying way clear of picking them for game week 1. Let's jump over to Manchester City then, because they got a lot of their business done early in the window and
Early in the year, mate.
early in the year, yeah,
in January.
Yeah, very, very true. But I think it is really good. Like, I think obviously Tierney Reinders came in. He's probably one of the most expensive of the lot. Ryan Nuri came in. Ryan Cherky, James Trafford now done as well. Naipan come in from Rosenborg too. And that is this summer's business mainly done. And who knows? It wouldn't surprise me if they maybe make another move before the window ends as well. But it's really nice. Like it almost feels like they are trying to rejuvenate that squad. They're trying to go through a little bit of a turnover, keeping in mind that maybe Pep Guardiola might not be there in a couple of seasons' time. I think the oldest player of the lot there that isn't Marcus Bettinelli, the third-choice goalkeeper, is Reinders at 26 years old, and that's kind of the perfect age. He can still maybe get a little bit better as well. I like all of these players. I do question slightly Nuri defensive side of his game, but that isn't really what he's being brought in for at all. It's all about going forward. I still think the right back position could be added to as well in that City squad. I think they could do with a centre back as well, possibly too. If they were,
I think they got about 100 of them.
No, but we know what half of John Stones' injury record isn't amazing. Like Josko Gvardiol is now going to be considered, I guess, mainly as the left centre back there for them.
Yeah.
But
people are sleeping on the City squad. They're sleeping on it. Yeah. I'm telling you, they're sleeping on this window in this City squad. I think it's
really
amazing.
Good.
Yeah, and I just don't ever think that Pep has 2 negative seasons in a row. It just doesn't happen. Like, I think Pep has looked at last season, figured out a couple of little bits he wants to tweak. And a lot of these players that have been signed are probably club signings more than Pep signings.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that.
But the core of the team, and again, we were speaking earlier about settled roles and settled positions, despite the fact they had a negative season last year, the core of the team is still extremely strong. Gvardiol, Diaz, Rodri, Haaland up top. You know, even players I think took big steps forward last season, like Savinho. There is so much talent in this City squad, like it's eye-watering. And yes, we can talk about Liverpool and Arsenal having amazing windows and probably slightly better windows than City, but plugging Tijani Reinders, who was one of Europe's best midfielders, into that role alongside Rodri last season. Cherky, incredibly creative. Phil Foden, I can't see him having 2 down seasons in a row. Doku, Savinho, Haaland. And then a player that just isn't spoken about ever, who was unbelievable in his first 6 months of Premier League football, is Omar Mamouche, who from January onwards settled into this league like it was nothing, and I think across a full campaign will prove to be one of the best forwards in the league. So when you combine all of those things with Pep Guardiola, I just don't see any world in which they don't mount a significant title challenge this year. I think they're in a really good position.
I think the interesting thing is, I agree they're stacked. I think they need to sell players. I think when you look at the centre-back position, they bought in Kusanov, Victor Reis, and Bar last season.
Like young.
And they are so young. And then you've got the established ones of Ake, Akanji, Stones. They've got so much depth there. Their attacking positions, the depth across the whole front line.
It's ridiculous.
I think the interesting thing is, we spoke about Arsenal, settled tactics, probably dropped a few players in there. I think Guardiola's tweaking things again this season. I think you've got Marmouche and Haaland, 2 kind of strikers in terms of their profile, something you haven't had before Marmouche came in. And I think, what does he do? Does he play Marmouche off the left in a more 4-3-3? Then you got Doku, Savinho, all these. How does he keep this squad happy? I think Grealish needs to go. Calvin Phillips is still there. I still think they got work to do in the transfer window to get rid of some of these squad players, give some of those young centre-backs some loan experience elsewhere. But I think it's not as settled as an Arsenal, for example.
But it never is, man. Pep roulette. It's always Pep roulette.
Yeah. It's the fun element of it, isn't it?
Yeah. It never has that. Like, I think whenever you think of Pep's, even the best of Pep, it was like, who's playing this week? Yeah. Like, especially in forward areas.
Yeah. FPL was a nightmare.
It's never a settled front three in a Pep side in forward areas since he's been at Manchester City, and I think that'll be the case this year.
Yeah.
No, I think, again, I do think you're right, Joe, in your statement that it's going slightly under the radar. Like, it wouldn't shock me if, like, we get to November, they're top of the league, and everyone's like, oh yeah, Ryan Aït-Nouri's just, like, ripping it up.
All of these transfers happen pre-Club World Cup. I think that's the reason people aren't talking about Man City's business, because it was done it was either done in the January window. I think what they did last season quite quite cleverly is they went, okay, this season is effectively going to be a write-off. We're not going to win the league. Let's
Bring
get
in
loads
some
of business
guys.
done
Yeah,
in January to bed them in for 6 months, and then also pre-club World Cup signings like Ryan Cherki, Ryan Nuri, and go, okay, just give them time. And because Pep systems take time to adapt to. We're 6 months in now. I'm worried about City just suddenly popping up under the radar and just being like nuking teams 5-6-0.
I think one of the other things to consider is they've lost 2 players in Kevin De Bruyne and Kyle Walker. The leadership that they had in the squad,
Massive.
what they brought tactically in terms of Walker being able to invert or go down the wing, probably lost that little bit of that overlapping ability. But how do they replace that leadership in the squad as well? For me, someone like Shirky's going a little bit under the radar. I made a video of him in my game of 2 halves. Check that out. But that X factor that they got from Kevin De Bruyne, they kind of replaced De Bruyne with those 2 players in Shirky and Reinders. Reinders can play alongside Rodri, that box-to-box nature, high technical quality. I think he'll be one of the signings of the season come the end of the year. And then you've got Shirky that brings that X factor that Kevin De Bruyne had, that ability to unlock that low block. I think it's a big season for Phil Foden. I think the season he had last season, Shirky plays in that similar role of that right side half space. What happens next season? It's a rotation game. They'll get their minutes. But I think Shirky has that X factor that they're probably missing in that attacking area, especially in the central area as well.
Yeah, Manchester City, with all those additions, could be quite frightening, lads, I do have to say. And again, they're playing Wolves in the final one standing, so could be an option for them as well. They are frightening. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about, we're going to go down to the bottom of the league, only touch upon a couple more, and chat about...
Not far off.
I was actually going to say Sunderland, but we can jump to Spurs afterwards. Sunderland have been busy, really, in this transfer window, and they kind of needed to be quite frank. The squad they had beforehand wasn't very, very impressive, but they've been busy in the market. They've brought in Habib Diarra, the central midfielder from Strasbourg, and Dingra from Brighton, who I spoke to a Brighton fan this week on Monday, in a video that actually you guys will see on Monday, and he didn't rate Dingra.
I've been seeing that on Twitter.
Which was mad to me. I thought I think he's a hell of a player. Enzo Lefebvre obviously officially joins after the loan move. Talabi comes from Club Bruges, who was wanted by a number of clubs throughout this window. Siddiqui, another midfielder, young guy from the Belgian league. Granit Xhaka, coming from Bayer Leverkusen to Sunderland now, is absolutely outrageous. Raulnildo, oh my God, I can't say it. Raulnildo coming from Atletico Madrid, adding a little bit of experience to that left-back position. It probably, I assume, means they also aren't done as well. They're still till the window ends. They've made a lot of signings, haven't they, Meron? But they kind of needed to, for the fact that the squad definitely was not Premier League ready. The experience they've added in kind of Granit Xhaka in that midfield is going to be huge. What do we make of it in terms of the transfers coming in?
Well, you usually get worried when the squad has this much turnover before a season starts. How are they all going to gel together? But if you look at that midfield of Xhaka, Diarra, Enzo Lefebvre, is there a better midfield that's come up from the Championship? Premier League ready. Diarra is such a young, excited talent. 21 years old. He can play across the defensive midfield, centre midfield, and attacking midfield positions. So excited to see what he does this season. Enzo Lefebvre's already been there, contributed last season, but they still need to add little bits here and there. For me, the centre-back position just needs a huge uplift in quality. You can't have that midfield, and then once you get beyond that, you just Ballard, O'Neill. I think they need to improve that centre-back position. They still got work to do, but why would Xhaka go there? He sees something that could happen in terms of being able to stave off relegation and build from there. The age he's at, the experience he brings, Premier League ready. It's an interesting window so far. Is the manager the right manager to take them forward with those players? That's another question.
That is a very good question, yeah.
They need a striker. Issador's there. You can let him start the season, but you probably want depth in case it doesn't work.
They're linked to Chelsea.
Mark
yeah. But again, he's like a very young striker who's barely played senior minutes, which would be a bit of a risk, to be honest, in my opinion. I think you're right. Centre backs. They need 2 really minimum to come in. Goalkeeper is still, I think an issue. They did come in today. Okay, interesting. Joseph, how are we feeling? Because it feels like really, I don't know when people spoke about their early predictions for the season stuff. Sunderland seem like the only newly promoted side that people are willing to try and keep up in their predictions. They're willing to say Brentford will go down instead of them. Do you think the same, or do you think they're going straight back down?
I think it's been all right. Yeah, I think it's been okay. I like the Granit Xhaka deal. I think that's one of the better signings from a promoted side I can ever remember in terms of status. You think of maybe Edwin van der Sar going to Fulham, Yuri Djorkaeff back in the day, but I think Granit Xhaka, certainly up there in terms of status and joining. I think it's been okay, but the squad needed a lot of work. It reminds me a little bit reminiscent of Ipswich last season, where I think, they brought in a lot of exciting talent, didn't they?
You think the same level of I feel like they brought in bigger names here at Sunderland.
Yeah, I think they've brought in maybe, I don't know, man. That Ipswich side brought in basically the best players out of the Championship.
Yeah, but these guys are European players at times. Like Ndingwa was playing when he was playing for Brighton, was playing for a very good Brighton side. Diarra playing for a Strasbourg side that was very, very good last season. I get your point. I do get what you mean.
Extremely young, has got no Premier League experience. It's like a big risk factor coming over to the Premier League, despite the fact everything you hear of him coming out of France is very positive. I think Ndingwa again has big upside, but has not played consistent football for Brighton for a long time now. Granit Xhaka, I'm very positive about, but I look at the forward line, you spoke about it there. Top scorer last season was Wilson Isidore. He scored 13 goals.
Yeah,
this is a Sunderland team that, really towards the back end of the season totally capitulated in the Championship, scraped in there, really, didn't they, form-wise, to getting into a Premier League spot. So I think it's been a good window, and I don't know what more they could have done. They've certainly tried their best to recruit, haven't they? And they've recruited heavily, and they've spent a lot of money. But I personally still feel they're a little short. Yeah,
the goalkeeper that's joining, I think it's pronounced Robin Roths, from NEC Nijmegen. We'll be interested to see how he performs in the Premier League.
I actually like their young goalkeeper, Patterson.
I did think he's
I really like him.
He made a fantastic save in the playoff final. But I do also understand people's reservations to go into a Premier League season with him. I think
it's just so hard, man. That's that level. Jump is insane.
Especially when you haven't got a squad that's gelled together and you're just totally overhauling your squad.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Okay, then let's mention Spurs whilst we're here as well then.
As winners?
Not necessarily, but just because I think if we've mentioned the other top six, maybe we should also chuck them in as well. Because interestingly, the biggest signing was Thomas Frank. I think you have to include him in the transfer window for them. A good change-up, in my opinion, from Ange Postecoglou. I think that was needed. Mohamed Kudus, I think, is a good signing. Flat out a good signing. Considering the fees that everyone else has spent for wingers, I think he could...
How much was it?
£60 million. I think it could be bang on, to be honest, if not the best of the lot. Officially brought in Kevin Danso, officially brought in Matthias Dell. Vuskovic finally joins them. They do need more. They definitely do need more as well. However, as I've stressed a few times, the window isn't done.
No.
They have looked at a few other positions. Where do you think they need Tomo then in order to maybe challenge for this title?
I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen them bring in a number 6. I think
every Spurs fan's wanted that for 2 years.
And we haven't really seen any super strong links to the number 6. João Palhinha's name has sort of been banded about, hasn't it? I'm not sure about the style of 6 Thomas Frank wants. Does he want that destroyer in João Palhinha? And if that is the case, is that going to be a long-term deal? Is that just going to be a loan because he's 30 years old now and obviously a huge ground eater when he was in the Premier League across those 2 seasons? Nobody put up as many tackles as João Palhinha did. But does that suit how Tottenham want to play, which is going to be surely more ball dominant under Thomas Frank? I think there are a couple of question marks there. They obviously want a 10. It's clearly abundantly obvious they want a 10. They went for Morgan Gibbs-White to the tune of £60 million, a player that can play in that 10 position with some pace and power between the lines, which is a little bit surprising to me, given they've got Madders, they've got Kudus that can play there, Kulusevski can come inside, can't he, as well? Obviously, Lucas Bergvall is a lock for that midfield role. He can also play a little bit more advanced. But they want a 10. So who that 10 is going to be now from this moment on, I think is going to be really interesting, because I don't see loads of names in the market that immediately spring to mind. And if I was a Tottenham fan after finishing 17th last season, and if I was a Tottenham player as well, if I was Christian Romero, or if I was one of the really ambitious stars, young stars in this project, I'd be looking at the window saying, we finished 17th last year. We've got in the Champions League here. We've won our first trophy in 20 years. I was expecting a little bit more from the window so far.
Sounds like a Newcastle story.
Still
waiting deep in the
sign
window.
more players than they have.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I think
Not too far.
the interesting thing with Tottenham's transfer window is I still don't know how they're going to play. I think usually when a manager goes to a club, they have a set style of play. You know what they're going to do. You kind of roughly know what formation they're going to play, what they want from certain roles in a team. But Thomas Frank is so adaptable. You know, what he played at Brentford, going from a team that played long ball football to playing on the floor a bit more. What is he going to do at Tottenham? Like you said, bringing in Gibbs White, such a talented player. But you got Maddison there. You got Kudus that can play in that number 10 position and drift from that right side if he really wants to. Kulusevski. It's like, what are they trying to do? Who are they trying to target? The midfield needs like a total overhaul. I think you've got the young players in Gray, Bergvall. You know, some of those players in Bentancur, Basuma, Sarr are good players, but how are they going to play? It's like you said, what kind of profile do they want?
Yeah.
Paulinho, or do they want more of a ball player? It's still interesting with the transfer window. I don't know who they're going to go for. And I don't know. I think the depth of the front line, you know, Son leaving, you only got Tell on that left wing, really. Odegaard didn't really play last season. Brennan Johnson's your right winger. If Kudus is out, the depth isn't really there for me if you're doing a Champions League season to be really rotating in and out. And I think they just need to move quickly. They need to move quickly. They need to get players in for the Champions League season, similar to what Newcastle have to do. And it's just going deeper into that window. And you think, who are they going to get? Who are they going to get that's going to really raise the floor of the squad? Yeah. I think they need more of an overhaul than us, it's especially in that midfield position. And again, what if Romero leaves?
They
what
need
if
a
Van
boost,
der Ven
man.
leaves? They need it's a
they need
morale
boost.
element of it.
I agree. I think they need a boost. I think their fans need a signing just to go like, yeah, come on, that is a cracking signing.
Is that not kudos?
They need more.
I think that
they need more.
Kudus, had it happen later in the window, yeah, I would agree with. But I think if Kudus is the only arrival at Spurs, the fan base will be very, very on edge, very early doors. And obviously, I love Thomas Frank, and I agree with you, Zach. I think it's potential big upside there.
Yeah.
But surely Thomas Frank wanted more in the market than just one signing. And I understand this idea that at Brentford, he's done the most with the least. You know, he has constantly bought very little players or players that have very low status in the game and improved them to a level where they're Brian Mbeumo's or they're Johan Visser's or Ollie Watkins. But, you know, at Tottenham, I think it's a different kettle of fish to doing that at Brentford. At Tottenham, you need support from the board, and it feels like to me right now, the board aren't supporting him.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with Tottenham for the rest of the window. I guess we could probably shout out a couple of others. Leeds, I think, actually have started, since 2 weeks ago when I filmed the last podcast, have started doing some decent business as well, bringing in some good younger players as well. Well, not necessarily younger, it's about 26, but good like experienced players that can come in straight into that team, because I thought that before when they got promoted that Leeds side was in for a bit of trouble, but it'll be very interesting. I think the manager side of it is going to be a different one come December.
It's interesting what they've done with the profile player they're bringing in. It's very physical. You know, the long staffs, Bio at centre back, Bournemouth at centre back as a ball playing centre back. The physicality that they're bringing to the squad, I think they've identified an area that they need to improve on, especially going into the Premier League to give them a chance of surviving.
Yeah, Statch as well, I thought was a good signing from Hoffenheim. So I think they could be within a shout. I think they still need one or two more, but not too bad. I'm a big fan of Everton's window. I know they need more players, but I do think Tiano Barry is a great signing. Like, I think he's somebody we could get to.
When you say you're a big fan of their window, you're a big fan of the hypothetical window they're having.
If they manage to bring in Malik Fofana, big if, I completely understand. And there's another winger who's escaping my mind just right now. I think it's fantastic. Like, but still, Tiano Barry is a really good signing. They've needed a striker for a long time.
They are so short, Djellab.
Yeah.
They are so short. They've got 16 senior players on their books. They've got 4 midfielders at the club. You know, I was watching David Moyes' press conference on Sky Sports News before I left this morning, and he was saying, I'm going to be honest with you, Everton fans, like, I haven't got the players to do anything here. We are really struggling in the market. We haven't been able to get anybody over the line. And I think that is an extremely worrying statement. We are less
But is that
than
not
2
just a
weeks
statement to put
from the
pressure onto the board, surely, to like get these players in?
But even if
the morale of the
but
squad,
even if it is, we're 2 weeks out. They've got 16 senior players. I love the Tiano Barry deal. Totally agree with you. The midfield
as
is
new, right? The
the
fullbacks,
midfield's not there. The centre back issue is a problem given the injuries they've got there too. I can't believe they haven't recruited more players. I think they are so short right now. I think the idea of them having a good window is totally hypothetical. You know, Malik Fofana is a pipe dream as we sit here today. Yes, they've had a bid knocked back, but I've seen no news of them having agreement with the player either. I know similar for Takafusi Kubo, might have been the name you were thinking of earlier. I haven't seen any news of a bid being accepted or the player accepting that move. So hypothetically, Everton are being linked with everybody. Yeah, great names, great options, and I agree. But none of them have joined the club yet. As we sit here today, we're like 13 days out from the start of the season, and they haven't got a 20-man senior squad for the Premier League. That's concerning, mate.
20 days is a lot of time. One signing per day, they're laughing. One signing per day, they're laughing. But no, you are right to say that, Joe. I completely agree. The guys that have come in, let's rephrase it. The guys that have come in so far are good signings.
Adam Asnu, like it.
Fantastic.
About it, like it.
Fantastic. Let's hope they get the other 3 more, 4 or 5 more than they need as well. I think that is completely fair enough. We've mentioned the other 2 promotion sides. Burnley are doing a little bit of business.
Villa. Are we
in.
mentioning Villa here? Because they haven't signed anyone.
What transfer window?
That's the thing, yeah, literally. But they haven't signed anyone, but they haven't lost anyone as of yet. Like, that is a key thing.
They signed Kamara to a new deal as well.
Kamara's new deal is almost as good as a new signing, to be honest. They managed to keep Watkins. I think that's great. Keep Martinez. That's great. Keep Morgan Rogers. That's fantastic. They do need another attacking player, especially the fact they've lost Asensio, who didn't join. Rashford didn't come on a permanent as well. Though, I was speaking with a Villa fan again on Monday. He thinks that Meron could have a big year for them this season. Coming up to. Yeah, he will have to, definitely. So, whilst I do agree, they haven't brought anyone in, I do think the fact that they've not lost, as of yet, any of the key players is also a good thing for now for them. Because they, again, we mentioned it a couple of times, keeping your squad the same and having that was good last year is not a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing, and could be really good for them for the start of the season. So I'm actually not too.
It's that PSR trouble again, though, isn't it?
It is.
Selling the women's team. It kind of feels like they want to sell a player. They need the funds.
It does feel like
it feels like are they touting Watkins to Man United a little bit in the papers? It's like they need to sell someone, get that 50-60 million to refresh, even if it's 1 or 2 players, and you keep the rest of the squad. It feels like they need to sell a Martinez, a Watkins, and refresh the squad because they're not spending because they've got no money.
Another one I'd like to mention as well. I think normally every time this kind of video is done or topic is done, they come up for a lot of the forward signings they bring in. But Brighton actually think have had a secretly decent window. Like one of the things I think next season they could have done was is strengthen the defence, and they've done that as well this season. Had the free transfer of Boskagli come in from PSV Eindhoven. They've managed to bring in Diego Coppola, from Hellas Verona, a centre back, young centre back. And then they have also added to the front line as well in the Greek signings they've brought in too. 2 of them, one of them obviously was done back in January, but officially stayed at his club and went back on loan. Tom Watson's an exciting winger as well for them to have brought in. The Cooper that they've brought in as the left back to replace Estupinan, I think, or at least battle for that position. I think it's good as well. I think they are some positions of need and want, and managed to improve there as well. So I think Brighton could be worth.
If you look at the striker position, though, losing João Pedro, Evan Ferguson's gone on loan and he's smashing goals in for Roma in a preseason game. But it's like you've got Danny Welbeck there now.
Because they have brought in, obviously, the Greek striker, Kostalos. They had the other guy whose name escapes me, also a Greek forward, Simas, who's had a good year as well. Like Brighton's forward line is just filled with players all the time. Like it's kind of that
interchangeable, isn't it?
Yeah, interchangeable, and that like conveyor belt where
Danny Welbeck's
one leaves,
Danny Welbeck's
and that's normally the one guarantee that Danny Welbeck leaves alive.
They've kept hold of Matoma as well.
Kept hold of Matoma
so far.
And then who's the other? As I mentioned, Tom Watson. They can like kind of bed into the side slowly. Minter last season was fantastic for them on the right wing.
I think they have to keep Baleba, to be honest with you. That's the big one.
If they manage to keep Baleba, which it does feel like they're going to do, keeping Baleba's absolutely
nobody's affording
brilliant. At least not this summer anyway. It feels like maybe that's a move for next summer, possibly for anybody out there. Ruta, I think, could have a big year next season for them. I think that they are in for. I think everyone knows them. They've kind of got them as that like team that could jump into the European places next year. But unless there's any other shouts out there, I think European-wise, Atletico Madrid, I think, have had a quite decent transfer window for some of the signings they brought in. Baina, in particular, brilliant signing. I think I mean, Madrid just bringing in Trent is definitely not too bad. Como in Serie A are doing pretty well. And, of course, Strasbourg, I think, in France. Don't know why, of course, but
Chelsea
done pretty well. Yeah, funny enough to suggest that.
I think another loser of the window so far, we've spoken about winners, is so far West Ham.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, man. I have been really unconvinced by their business so far this summer. I think losing Mo Kudus, not yet replacing him, is, despite the fact he had a bad season last year, a big loss, a really big loss. He was a driving force from midfield for them. I think the upside of Lucas Paquetá having his ban overturned or having his ban cancelled, it is really good news. But the midfield feels light, man.
They need
Peter
like
Rodriguez,
Everton,
Souček, and James Ward-Prowse was playing in that midfield three in pre-season against Man United, and I thought to myself,
they need players in every position. Yeah. Like, people might say whatever about Vladimir Coufal. Coufal was a good player for them. Like, he did a good job for them, I think, at right back.
Yeah, they've got Kyle Walker-Peters and El Hadji Diouf in, though. And those are two decent options in
okay, fair. But Fabianski, gone.
It's the midfield, man.
Antonio, I think there was actually rumours they'll bring him back, right? So they're talking about giving him another extension, even though at the moment, gone. Aaron Cresswell, gone. We've spoken about the fullbacks. Kurt Zuma, gone. Like, they are everywhere needing a position. They need a striker. They need a midfielder. They need centre-backs. They need a goalkeeper. All of these positions at the moment, like, I think they officially bought Todibo as well for 40 million.
Yeah, that was an option that got triggered, I think.
Had to happen.
What do you think about them in relegation?
If someone suggests them to get relegated, I wouldn't be too shocked. I think the only thing that they have, I don't know.
They've got Bowen.
They've got Bowen, exactly, that a lot of other teams don't have. They also have someone who I think will manage to somewhat figure out in Graham Potter. Like, from what we saw of Graham Potter previously, prior to his move to Chelsea, was a very good manager. We haven't necessarily seen that so far, I think,
that's the thing for me,
West Ham. He did get them a little bit more defensively secure so far, but I can understand if anyone said them to get relegated. I just think, though,
if you look at, like, West Ham, even though the summer's not been great, and, like,
Paqueta,
if you look at that squad compared to any of the newly promoted sides, the quality throughout it, like, man to man is like, wow, like West Ham, they'd chop your hand off to have West Ham squad. And despite the fact West Ham haven't had a brilliant window and like the fans are up in arms, like man to man, it's still like, wow, Paqueta,
but they are a bone injury away. They're a bone injury away from who has had injury issues
it's
before.
Not just that, it's the morale. It's similar to all the other clubs we've spoken about.
And there's the fans do not help.
If they don't start well under Potter, there was no new manager bounce. They kind of just sailed through the rest of the end of the season last year. If he doesn't start well this season, they've already sold Kudus. If Bowen gets injured, like you're saying, they've got players there, but it's more about,
Fulkrug needs the bang, man. He needs the bang.
I forgot about him because he's been injured for most of last season, but they need their players to step up. They need Potter to step up next season to at least steady the ship. Yeah. It might not be a season where they push for top half or Europe. They just need to build that style of play, get that confidence going in the squad, get some more players this summer, and it should be okay. But it's just that worry. If they don't start well, if they don't sign players to replace these squad players, it's along the lines of Wolves, similar to them. I like Wolves in terms of how they finished last season. Yeah. Their business is okay. It doesn't stand out in any real way. They've lost Cunha, Aït-Nouri. It's just those clubs that if one of the promoted clubs, it's unlikely one of them,
be half decent.
You got the Brentfords, the Wolves, the West Hams that didn't really push on last season until they got a new manager, obviously Wolves. But it's just that element of the morale. Can they really start badly next season? I don't think they can.
And if they do, like the West Ham fans will
be toxic.
Let you know. And it wouldn't be again. There could be an early sacking there. Another team very quickly. Fulham done nothing basically.
Well, did you see Ollie Glasner's quotes yesterday?
What did he say about Palace?
Really concerning quotes, saying that he hoped he'd had his business done earlier. Now, last season it was left very late in the window.
It was left very late,
and it affected the start of the season for them. And he thinks if it's not done soon, it will affect the start of the window for them.
It is tough though. Palace are in a very difficult position though, aren't they?
They also had a bid rejected for Mateta yesterday. Eze looks like he could potentially leave. I think Palace needs to be a little bit careful here that they don't end this window losing Eze towards deadline day, because he has that release clause in his contract, so that could happen, and that immediately puts a whole different slant on that Crystal Palace squad, who are coming off the back of a trophy win, but then you've got the Europa Conference League news, the whole battle that's gone on there, very few signings, Mateta being potentially unsettled. I think Palace are one to watch here.
I think you're very right there. And Glasgow's a manager that a lot of teams will happily take off your hands,
Absolutely.
right? Especially the big boys. I feel like that's one of the things that we've noticed, or at least I've felt this year, is that the big teams have really put their foot down.
Yeah.
They're
trying to separate themselves from the rest of the league, aren't
they
they?
are. Like the guys that have the money and the
top
wages
four.
available, they have. But even United though, they've gone to the guys who are below her and said, okay, we'll take your best player. Yeah, cheers, thank you very much, Brentford. Cheers, thank you very much, Wolves, and all the other teams as well. Have very much just kind of put their financial foot down on the league. It feels like.
I think if you also talk about Crystal Palace, they're in Europe. Yeah. It's not just a normal Premier League season, and you haven't even got the squad.
Yeah.
They're not used to it, and I think the moment they start picking up injuries, where is the squad?
Imagine Gahey goes late in the window too.
Yeah, so not only do they lose their best players, they don't have no squad to be able to
deal
rotate
with all
or
the
get the
minutes.
energy back in the squad.
Yeah.
They need to bulk out that squad if they're not even going to replace those players.
That's a very, very good point. Well, that is the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. Boys, thank you so much for joining me and chatting about who is winning and who is losing the window. If we had to have one team that has won and lost it, Joe, who are yours?
I think Arsenal so far have won it, but I think Liverpool will win it when Isaac gets done. And lost it so far as we sit here today. I think it's hard to look past Newcastle just from just from an optics point of view.
Meron, yourself?
It's tricky. I think Arsenal's transfer window really depends on that Gyökeres signing in terms of being able to bring in the best out of that front line. For me, Chelsea are going under the radar a little bit. The squad they're building, the players they're bringing in, I love how they're doing this. They're just doing something different to the rest of the Premier League in terms of that PSR, navigating the selling and the buying of the players. You can't look past Liverpool. Bringing in Wirtz, that's just, if they bring in Isak as well, they probably won it. And then Man City just going a bit under the radar because they got their business done early. Shirky, Reinders, Nouri covering that left back role. They probably need a bit more depth on that right back. But for me, the winner at this moment in time is Liverpool. But Chelsea and Arsenal are running them close.
Okay, and loser, I'll make you say it if you need to.
Spurs.
Okay, absolutely fine.
Tied.
I agree basically with the winner. I think it's probably Liverpool. And I actually, you know what? At the very end there, I think Palace could be it. Very potential at the end of the window for them to be it, but we will see. If you've enjoyed the video, please let us know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the podcast. The channel, YouTube channel. If you are listening on Spotify, then make sure you're following us on there as well. Rate it 5 stars too. It means the absolute world to me. Joseph Tomlinson, the people at home want to check you out. Where can they go?
Your description, probably.
It'll be linked down there. Meron, yourself?
At Coach Meron on Twitter and A Game of Two Halves on YouTube.
Beautiful. It'll be linked down below in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for the video on Monday that's coming out. 20 Premier League fans, they're back. And we'll see you next week.